Hello, I'm Sandra Ross, and I'm speaking with Melissa Stannard, who's a participating artist in the wonderful exhibition Wildflower Women 3, Women Walking Country. Hi Mel, welcome to this chat today.
Yama Sandra, hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We're going to take a closer look at some of the works in the show. Would it be fair to say that looking at your large scroll artwork, that it seems to be about the earth, about the terrain and the mapping of country?
Yes, that's spot on. For me, mapping country and place is incredibly important. I love looking at the terrain from different angles and from different viewpoints, both the colonial and the Indigenous.
There are elements in this work that suggest the discarded and the unused. Why have you used an old pianola paper roll?
For me, finding and showcasing the beauty in the discarded, the abandoned and, the overlooked, it's always been important in my work. Everything that I collect has, elements of a previous history, a life before. But they're things that have, outgrown their use or purpose for someone. And so I like to collect them and nurture them and make new work with them. Like the delicate perforations and the musicality of the pianola scrolls, not only the notes on there, but the words printed along the edge. It's the words of the song about the dawn chorus and greeting the birds, and all those things speak to me and help me decide if that's the scroll that I'm going to work on, because I have quite a collection of them.
Oh, do you? Yes. They're a bit rare now, aren't they?
They are, but they are turning up in tip shops and antique centres and things. So I go and collect them and then make new work with them.
Yeah, they kind of have an embedded memory, don't they? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, see, think about the people that have played the pianola and played those songs, and, what setting was it in? Were they sitting there and playing that pianola and it was a joyous occasion, or were they feeling sad and lonely? Were they celebrating? Were they mourning? There's all these other layers of history already in the pianola scrolls, but it's also that the texture of the paper and the when it's really worn and it starts to yellow with age. I find that so sublime to work with, and then working back into it with different ochres from country, grinding and processing them up, and then working with bush inks and just kind of tracing the lay of the land. It's a very intuitive process. I just kind of flow with what I feel, and sometimes I take them with me and unscroll them and lay them in the sand and work on them.
Beside the scrolls, or beside the scroll, are these little gorgeous jars that contain like earthy coloured ground ochres. What do these represent for you, and how do they relate to the scroll hanging beside them?
Those are some of the ochres that I've actually ground and processed, collected all from Kalula and Rainbow Beach, mostly from roadside verges and other overlooked spaces. That's kind of important to my work as well. It's not just the overlooked items that I'm reusing. And then, processing it up, there's clay ochres, there's sand-based ochres, there's sedimentary, there's really firm rocks, and you think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. But, just working away with the mortar and pestle, and you get the most beautiful colours. Yeah. During the opening, and a few times I've taken people up to the show, I've opened the little rubber stoppers and gotten people to feel it. And the first reaction that most people say is, it feels like really expensive makeup.
In the exhibition, we're looking at now 2 long hanging silk works that move gently with the slightest of breeze. And I can see subtle images on these hanging pieces. Can you tell us just a little more about these?
So they're actually, again, discarded textiles that I've reworked, but with a cyanotype process. So it's a photographic process, but I've changed the chemical composition, so I'm getting these. I mixed my own colours, so I've got sort of peachy, rusty, earthy tones. Both of them are about mapping country and mapping place. So one starts with, the one that has the topographical mapping starts top and finishes on the bottom with plant matter from Rainbow Beach, but then when you look into it right up the top, it'll be the one hanging on the right-hand side, it actually has the colonial cartographic kind of mapping. So it actually has street mapping of the entire Rainbow Beach area and Kalula Cove area. It's more the Indigenous way of seeing and mapping from above, so topographical mapping. And then stitching the mapping. So then there's all these layers of knowledge and meaning. There's the colonial, there's the traditional, First Nations Indigenous knowledge, but then there's that retelling of knowledge by stitch, When you're stitching, you're re-remembering. And by having the plant matter top and bottom, it's talking about mapping of country through the plants, like at the moment with the silky oaks. There's seasonal mapping, silky oaks mean that the eels are big and fat and juicy and ready. And the one beside it, it's talking all about from the beach. So there's corals and seaweeds at the top, and then it all the way through, there's all different plant matter that has been processed and printed into the silk, finalizing in the balabala, the butterflies, when we had the big butterfly season. So there's banksias, there's all sorts of, wallum and elements in there.
Oh, they're beautiful, beautiful, Mel. Now, your artwork speaks of a close connection to country through this experience of Didiri. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that is for you?
So Didiri is an Indigenous spiritual way of connecting. It's deep listening. So each of the clans or groups, we have our own way of Didiri. So in Uwalare, it's Winangale. So Uwalare and Gamilare, which is my ancestral country. So Winangale is our word for deep listening. And it's an integral part of my practice and my poetry, and how I move through and connect with land around me. We're listening into the sounds of nature. We're hearing what the land wants to tell us, what the plants want to tell us. When we take the time to stop and notice and check in and look at the overlooked. But it also means that deep listening within ourselves, deep within our gut and in our gi, our heart. When you're taking the time out to connect with nature and really deeply listen and interact, then you're hearing more of, your own true thoughts come up and bubble to the surface, away from, all the busyness that we have.
Yeah, exactly, in our lives.
Yeah.
In the exhibition, you've included some small sculptural elements, and they're lovely jewellery pieces. Can you tell us a little bit about, just a little bit more about these and what they speak to you?
So the jewellery pieces, they're rings and pendants. They speak to the overlooked, the life in the undergrowth, in the leaf litter, we're so busy looking for the big, bright, colourful, bold plants or the big trees, and I think we tend to overlook a lot of the innate beauty it's right there if we just look for it. So where I'm sitting now, I've just looked down and there's a beautiful dragonfly wing beside me, in amongst the she oak needles, and that captures my attention. And I think if I can get people to notice the overlooked in nature and appreciate it, then maybe we look a bit deeper inside ourselves as well. But a lot of the rings are kind of fungal inspired, so they're lichen and fungal inspired. So it's about that deep connection we all have to each other and to nature. And when we are connected and we are looking after country and looking after place as caretakers, then everything is better.
Yeah, and richer. Yes, wonderful.
Yeah, and better in our communities too, like connecting with each other and taking those times. If your bowl and your cup isn't full, then you can't share it with anyone else.
Yeah. Wow, Mel, look, thank you so much for sharing more about your work in this exhibition, Wildflower Women 3, Women Walking Country. It's such a gorgeous show, and your work speaks so beautifully in the room with with the kind of, the earthy tone. So thanks again, Mel.
No worries.
So much. And yeah, take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandra. Appreciate your time.